to summarize all the processes that happen in the digestive system. First, you have a process called ingestion, which is the process of taking in food that pretty much happens in the mouth. Also, mechanical digestion, and at the very beginning, the mechanical digestion is really the chewing that happens in the mouth. Then food is transported down the pharynx and the esophagus. There's a little bit of propulsion that happens. Just the process of swallowing propels the food back into the pharynx. And then the esophagus can actually do a peristalsis, which is a rhythmic contractions that will push food down into the stomach. If you're sitting up or standing up, that's not so big a deal because the esophagus is pretty much straight up and down and gravity can pull the food down. But if you're laying down on the sofa eating your chips, peristalsis is important because you don't want that food kind of coming back if your mouth is a little bit lower than your stomach. So those are propulsion. Food gets to your stomach, and there is churning in the stomach, which is a form of mechanical digestion. There is also chemical digestion that's happening in the stomach. We talked about in the mouth, chemical digestion of starches begins. In the stomach, chemical digestion of proteins begins. Food then gets passed on to the small intestine where you have more chemical digestion. Some of those chemicals are actually provided by the pancreas. There is segmentation, which is just a mechanical digestion form of breaking everything into little particles that can more easily be absorbed. The absorption is just taking the food primarily out of the small intestine, the nutrients that have been broken down into tiny monomers, really, that can be taken, absorbed across the cells of the intestine into the blood vessels mainly. Food gets passed on from the small intestine into the large intestine where more water is reclaimed, and then that is passed on primarily as feces down and out the anus, which is the process of defecation. So from those nutrients that have been taken into the body in the form of lipids, amino acids, and sugar monomers, those can now be used as in metabolism to produce cellular energy, or ATP. The equation that summarizes the big picture of what happens to glucose, as one example, and trust me, you're going to love this equation because you don't have to learn the 50 steps in the interim process, but if you ever take Biology 160, Intro to Cell, or any general biology courses, you'll be learning some of those steps. So you take a glucose molecule in the presence of 6 oxygen molecules. Big picture at the end of all of these reaction steps, you end up with 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, and the ATP energy that you need to use to run the cell. Now the liver tries to balance, provide a homeostatic balance for all the processes of when are you making sugars, when are you not making sugars. And one example of how that balances is looking at blood glucose. So if your blood glucose is balanced just right, which is the goal, everything is great. If, however, your blood glucose goes too high, the liver will make enzymes which will cause the process of glucogenesis to happen. That's when glucose is converted to glycogen and stored. So you have too much blood sugar, so the liver does glucogenesis, which allows storage of that sugar. Hopefully, that will bring your body, your blood sugar, back into balance. What happens if too much blood sugar is stored? Well, then your blood glucose levels will fall, in which case 2 processes happen. The first is glycogenolysis, all that stored glycogen, those stored sugars as long sugar polymers. can be broken down into individual glucoses, which can go to the cell and go through respiration to give you more ATP. Or you can also have a process called gluconeogenesis. That's the making glucose new, or really using amino acids from proteins or fats to be converted into glucose, or converted into ATP in any case for energy. So these three processes are in balance, and the liver is helping with enzymes that will help balance those, the glucogenesis, the glycogenolysis, and the gluconeogenesis. Let's talk about cholesterol for a minute. So cholesterol is really important. It has important structural roles as the basis of steroid hormones. It's one of the building blocks of the plasma membranes. So your body needs cholesterol. And most of the cholesterol is not actually made, or comes from what you eat, your diet. It's actually mostly made in your body and made in the liver. So your body is making most of the cholesterol, and some portion of the cholesterol, in this picture, a quarter of it, comes from the food you eat. Cholesterol and fatty acids can't just get in the blood and move around because they're fats. So they're transported in these protein complexes called lipoproteins or lipid protein complexes. They are also controlled in the liver. The two main ones that we'll talk about are LDLs, or low density lipoproteins. Those are important in taking cholesterol to the body cells. So when the liver has cholesterol, it will make LDLs and send them out into the bloodstream to deliver cholesterol. So how many LDLs you have and how much cholesterol is in them is related to how much cholesterol is present in your body, how much your body made, how much you ate. High density lipoproteins, on the other hand, transport cholesterol from the bloodstream back to the liver to be basically emptied into the feces in the form of bile. So in fact, high density lipoproteins will actually decrease the amount of cholesterol in your bloodstream, whereas LDLs are actually delivering it to your bloodstream. So the doctors frequently talk about HDL, LDL levels. They want your HDL levels higher and your LDL levels lower. You can also talk about the energy balance of your body. So ideally, the energy that you take in, how much you eat, will equal the total energy that you need to use. The energy that you take in is used during food metabolism to generate ATP, and hopefully that energy output is in terms of what ATP you've used. Some percentage of that it's not, when you burn glucose to get ATP and to use energy, your body's not 100% efficient. So you end up losing some of that as heat, which is also an energy output. Any excess energy that you took in that your body didn't use gets stored in the form of fat or glycogen. You can only store a little bit of glycogen, so it's mostly storing it in the form of fat. There are really tight controls of digestive activity. Most of them are controlled via the parasympathetic division of the nervous system. Remember, we talked about fight or flight and rest and digest. Well, parasympathetic is the rest and digest. It controls there are chemical and mechanical receptors that trigger reflexes. You could, like if the stomach stretches, that could be a stimuli. The pH of the contents of the food, or the presence of certain breakdown products. All of those can be stimuli that will trigger reflexes that could include secretions of digestive enzymes or hormones that tell you you're full or you're hungry. It can also trigger the smooth muscles, like stretch of your stomach will trigger the churning of your stomach, and food in your esophagus will trigger contraction of the esophagus to move food down it.